Hi, it's Diederik Gelderman here, President of the AVBA, the Australian Veterinary Business Organisation. Thanks for joining me today. And one of the things I find as I'm moving through Australia and travelling through Australia, talking to veterinary practices all over the place, is that they, like you, are always trying to improve the results they're getting from their practice for all the stakeholders in that practice. That's better results, better patient outcomes. That's better outcomes for the client and better care and understanding of the client. That's better results and outcomes for the team members. That's also better results and outcomes for the owners of the practice. You know, more time off, better profitability, those sorts of things. And the only way that you know whether you're actually achieving those better outcomes is by benchmarking. Benchmarking means comparing yourselves or comparing yourself to other practices in a similar demographic. So comparing yourself with other practices that sit in the same demographic that you do. Now, there's lots of different benchmarking studies available today. And so the question becomes, what benchmarking study should I use and why? Now, that question is so poorly understood that that's why I've made this video. The AVBA offers a unique benchmarking service, and it's called WellMap, which stands for the Well Managed Australian Practices Program. Now, WellMap is different, and it's different for two reasons. But let me first of all tell you one of the areas where it's not different. So where it's not different is that it's a benchmarking study. It'll help you compare your prices, your profitability, your wages, and all those nuts and bolts type figures with all the other practices that partake in that study. So that's all really good, and that's all really standard, and that's all really expected. Where WellMap is different is it gives you two other things. As important and debatably even more important than knowing the facts and the figures, the nuts and the bolts of your practice, is knowing how engaged your team are with your practice. Your team runs your practice, and recent studies show that up to a quarter or maybe even a third of team members are actually either actively or not actively disenfranchised or disengaged with your practice. So the ones that are actively disengaged are actually sabotaging you behind your back, as it were. The ones that are not actively disengaged just don't care one way or the other. They're not actively disengaged and sabotaging you. They're just not actively disengaged and doing enough to get by. So that's the bad side of the team. Now, on the good side of the team, about a quarter of your team will be highly actively engaged with your practice and doing everything that they can to move your practice forward for everyone involved, team members, clients, yourself, and obviously the patients. So in the middle sits a group of team members that are neither engaged nor disengaged, and they're the great majority. So what is your team? Where does your team fit? And without an actively engaged team that's driving your practice forward, you're at risk of having a disengaged team that is either holding your practice back or maybe even holding it where it is, or maybe even dragging it back. And that's one of the key areas where WellMap, the AVBA Bayer VetShare WellMap survey stands apart. We give you a team engagement study as part of WellMap. Having the nuts and the bolts and the figures means very little unless you also know how engaged your team is. Because if your team is disengaged, you need to do something about that before your nuts and bolts figures improve. I hope that makes sense. Now, the second area where WellMap differs is we hold your hand. And let me explain what I mean by that. It's all very well to get a survey result back and your demographic of where you sit and the benchmarking figures and all that sort of stuff. But what do you do with it? And as I go around, and as I've gone around for the last 15 or 20 years doing what I do, I hear that all the time. Hey, Diederik, I've got these figures here about how I match up to Joe Blogs, how I match up to this demographic area, where I sit in small animal, large animal, or equine, or cat, practices. But what do I do with this stuff? How do I translate or transform this data and make it useful in my practice? And that's the second big pivot point for WellMap. When you become a WellMapper, you get to come to the WellMap workshop. And this year, the WellMap workshop will be held on the 10th of October as part of our AVBA conference. On the Saturday, you'll have a whole day of conferencing with other participants in WellMap. Now, as part of that one-day workshop event, there will be trainers there. There will be people there that know how to take that information and help you implement it in your practice to get a better outcome. Now, as well as the trainers, as well as the facilitators, as well as the coaches, as well as the presenters, there's also going to be highly successful WellMap practices in that room. And you have the ability on that one day to, rub shoulders with them, to ask them to sit down with you and share how they made their practice so successful. So you'll actually be learning the strategies from these highly successful practices, and you'll be able to take those strategies and implement them directly into your practice. That is going to shorten the learning curve incredibly for you. So I hope that all makes sense. The two reasons, let me just summarize the two reasons why WellMap is different from any other benchmarking study that you can do. And let me share the two reasons as to why you must be a WellMapper in 2015. Number one, you will learn how engaged your team are with your practice. I hope they're all super engaged and love the direction in which the practice is heading. However, if they're not super engaged and love the direction where the practice is heading, you will know that in this anonymous survey. They do it anonymously, so they will tell you the truth. And then if the results aren't what you want, you can do something about it. You can take action. And the second reason why WellMap is different is because at the workshop, we help you take your data from the benchmarking study and implement strategies that will help you move your practice forward in the shortest amount of the shortest period of time. So that's it. I hope that makes sense. The WellMap registration link is on the associated email. The registration is now open, will stay open for about another month. So please sign up. If you've got any questions, ring the office and ask them, or ring me personally on 0408 79 337, and I'll help you and I'll answer any questions at all that I can about why you should join WellMap 2015. Bye for now.